I'd like to tell you briefly about my experience of COVID, and everybody's experience is different. I'm in rural BC where we have dramatically fewer cases than most places in the country. The COVID experience is different in every community. Remember the Atlantic bubble. And I know that you have a very difficult situation now. Your caseload is still rising while we have peaked. And I want to try and focus today on what our common experiences have been. So there was a first wave in around mid-March. And the surprising thing is how quickly we all moved online. In my church, we sent out a PDF with links to hymns and sermons. Most churches, it seemed to me, were able to move online in some way, mostly within a week or two. The other transition that happened really quickly was a move to online meetings. I became regional dean for a second region. So that was the first phase. The second phase, over the summer, there was some loosening of restrictions. In our area, small outdoor gatherings were permitted, and we had neighbourhood groups on people's patios. In-person services were allowed, but my church, many churches in my diocese, chose not to do that during the summer. And then in September, we moved to in-person services with limited attendance and sign-in and a whole bunch of other restrictions. We kept the online service as the main service, so we went to a hybrid church model. And we started a wild church for our young people, getting out for a hike in the woods with some spiritual input, something that was popular with all ages. That took us through the fall, and then in November the second wave really started to become serious, and we were locked down again. And we had to plan for an online Christmas. In February, the second wave was declining and the third wave cut in. And that meant that we went for another technical upgrade, and that takes us to today. My congregation are happy with online in the circumstances and expect online to continue beyond COVID. One of our members works on a ski hill and can take part in the service from a cabin at the top of the bunny slopes. There are 4 general points I'd like to make. Firstly, we were ready. We were ready to pivot online. We had, even though we weren't really using them, the tools. And that pivot online has in many places gone well. Of course, there has been a technical divide, but the pivot online has pushed many people to overcome their reluctance to move online because they've needed to go online. So the pivot online happened. And, as I like to say, COVID has broken the barriers of time and distance. And that's been hugely significant in our rural areas, but that's also true in urban areas. that breaking of the barriers of time and distance has been a gift to the Anglican Church of Canada. People are able to see the services at whatever time they like. I was able to become regional dean for large areas, and people from far, far away have been able to connect in to our services. Thirdly, COVID has changed our liturgy. The General Secretary said to me, in a fight between liturgy and space, the space wins. We are in a new space. This space, the online space. And our liturgy is adapting to that. There have been real issues around the Eucharist and how we offer the Eucharist or not. We've had to abridge our services to fit into the online context. And there has been a demand for daily services, especially and particularly maybe for Compline, as people have looked for new structures to their online COVID-focused life. And fourthly, there has been a stress on leadership. My phrase for this is COVID stole my toolbox. All of the ways in which I used to minister, most of them, have been taken away because I'm not able to have personal contact with people. I think it's true for both clergy and lay people. We've also had to deal with frequent change and technical demands. So many people that I know have had to upgrade their broadband internet over the last year. And in particular, this move online has disenfranchised very good clergy whose toolbox really was about in-person. And it's led to a kind of techno-clericalism where those clergy who are good with technology find themselves right at the centre with people stepping back and going, "Oh no, I can't do it, you do it, Vicar." Some concerns. And the first of those is, what is our lack of data because of COVID masking with regard to the big picture of the Anglican Church of Canada? What's going to happen to our attendance? What is happening to our finances as COVID has changed people's patterns of behaviour? And we have heard of the generosity of many people, but we don't know what is going to happen when we get through COVID or we get into the new normal. Secondly, what are the new patterns of attendance and membership that will emerge as we get into that new normal? Is hybrid church really going to be the new normal pattern of church membership, where people will be much more relaxed about attending week by week, and will expect there to be a service from their local church that they can partake in on Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not just on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning? Thirdly, if hybrid church is our way forward, what is the church and leadership capacity for delivering both a good online service and a good in-person service? And those two things have different demands. as I suggested earlier, the space shapes the liturgy. And fourthly, what about those churches that have not been able to pivot? And there are churches in my area, and I know in Toronto Diocese, that have not met in any shape or form for the last year and something months now. What's going to happen to those churches? If those are the concerns, here are some of the ways that I think we need data to speak to those concerns. We need data on lay perspectives, particularly about COVID and the church. It's all fine for people to say, hey, yes, we're going into hybrid church, and that'll be lovely. But what do the lay people and the lay leadership and the clergy who are going to have to deliver it actually feel about hybrid church or online church? And here is my plug. There is a survey called The Coronavirus, the Church and You, which you can find by Googling Coronavirus, the Church and You, which is based in the UK but has a particularly Canadian route through the survey, which is intended to find out what that perspective is. They've made one report last summer, they're doing another one now, and we're part of it. So I'm please asking you to contribute yourselves and to pass on the link to that service. That service will also be in, that link will also be in the Anglican Journal in the May edition. Second kind of data that we'll be looking at is the diocesan returns for 2020. And those are going to be very significant, especially as 2019 was not a good year for Anglican Church of Canada numbers. And thirdly, I'm going to be collecting for the first time some financial data to look at the viability of congregations through COVID. I'm going to do that because particularly the Church of England's data showed that their offerings were down by 9% in 2020 and another 8% decline was expected in 2021. One of my favourite quotes is from Winston Churchill. Never waste a good crisis. A good crisis sounds like an oxymoron, but it was a quote from Winston Churchill during the Second World War. I think a good crisis can give us two opportunities. One is a teachable moment to help people move forward in their thinking when we have their attention. But the second, the opportunity that we have now, is an opportunity for change. COVID is giving us an opportunity for change. Changes that we have needed to make for a long, long time. Changes that we are ready to make. Now is that opportunity. Now is that good crisis. And of course, there will be unexpected consequences. There will be things that we cannot see now that we will need to do, need to respond to. One thing that Elizabeth told me about was the way that municipalities have been asking the church for help through COVID. When we talk about change through COVID, it's also important to recognise how much of that change has been collegial rather than institutional. Leaders helping leaders, rather than structures telling people what they should do. The best dioceses have been enablers of that collegial change, as has happened in Toronto. They've provided opportunities for mutual support, or they've provided people who can enable support that is locally driven. And that's why I've been so excited to talk to you, because you are the change enablers. You are the consultants who are helping people to make the changes that they need to make. This time of COVID is the time where your ministry is desperately needed. And I hope that some of what I've had to say and the conversation that we're about to have will help you to find better ways of enabling that change. Thank you.